What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Weekly Cheese. It's the Week 15 recap. The Packers, they went into Baltimore and took down the Ravens in a hard-fought battle, winning the game 31-30. Way too close for comfort, but the offense was clicking on all cylinders. And despite the defense's struggles and the special team struggles, the Packers were able to come away with the victory over a very good Baltimore team. They are now 11-3, NFC North champions, and one game above everyone in the NFC. Don't go anywhere. You're not going to want to miss it. This is the Weekly Cheese.
Super Bowl! 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 Green Bay Packers! Super Bowl! Super Bowl!
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Weekly Cheese. I'm your host, Joe Ivan. Here with me, as always, in studio is Chris. Chris, what's up?
Super Bowl. What's up, Joe? Just being optimistic about the future on this Victory Monday.
Hey, a lot to feel good about. Definitely a bright future ahead for the Packers, but still tons of work to be done and things to clean up. I mean, yeah, the Packers won yesterday, but I don't think anyone out there was satisfied with how that victory went. I mean, after going up 14 points with 9 minutes left to play, I mean, the Ravens made a comeback, and
they made it an uncomfortable ending.
Very uncomfortable ending, but fortunately the Packers, they were able to weather the comeback and eke out of there with a 31-30 victory in a game that was really ultimately too close for comfort, especially when you think about the fact that Lamar Jackson wasn't the quarterback. It was Tyler Huntley. And the fact that it came down to a failed two-point conversion at the end, I mean, just way too close for comfort.
Yet again for Coach Harbaugh, that's a tough look for him.
I mean, that seems to be the guy's MO. After the game, he was talking about the analytics and probability of winning in overtime. Whatever, I would have kicked the field goal and hoped the defense could have stopped Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense at 40 seconds left, 2 touchdowns. I like to think Aaron could have gotten us into field goal range or something like that. But either way, the defense came up with the stops they needed, and they won the game. And with the win, the Packers now move their record to 11-3. They've clinched the NFC North for the 3rd straight year, and they've clinched a playoff spot. And to make things even sweeter, the Cardinals lost to the Lions on Sunday, and the Buccaneers got shut out by the Saints last night. So right now, the Packers, they have a full game lead in the conference, and they are eyeing up home field advantage and that ever so important first-round bye. So yes, Chris, things are looking bright for the Packers in the future.
Yes, Joe, they are.
But it really was not a perfect game by any means, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and, of course, the special teams running issue. But the defense came up with the stops when they needed to, and the Packers, they won the game. We'll get into the defense in a little bit and all the gripes I have there, but let's just start with the positives. And obviously the biggest positive from the game was the Packers' offense as a whole. The offense scored 30 or more points for the 4th straight game and was unstoppable basically the entire contest. Aaron Rodgers, what can be said about the man? Phenomenal once again. 23 for 31, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, a 132 passer rating. I mean, the guy is just unreal. He is the GOAT. He tied Brett Favre for the most touchdown passes in Packers history. Number 442 was thrown last night to Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And over the last 4 games, Aaron Rodgers has thrown 13 touchdowns, not 1 interception, and he is officially now the MVP frontrunner. He only threw 8 incompletions on Sunday, and he was really getting the ball around the yard entirely. 8 different receivers caught a pass on Sunday, and that was much needed from the Packers offense considering Davante Adams was literally double-teamed the entire game. He got the Calvin Johnson treatment, if you will. Two guys lined up right in front of him before the snap even occurs, and I mean, can you blame them?
No, but it was just bizarre to watch because even when he motioned, like not every time, but sometimes when they were doubling him like that, he would motion and you would see the two guys just run with him. It was so funny.
Yeah, I mean, he's just been a complete terror.
And the fact that he put on the performance while that was going on, I mean, okay, say what you want about their DBs last night, but they were still doubling them.
Yeah,
they
they're
still had a
getting
job
paid
to do.
play.
Exactly, yes.
And I mean, it makes sense why they're double-teaming him. Davante, he's had 3 straight 100-yard games coming into the game against the Ravens. And it was just obvious that they did not want Davante Adams to beat them. Anyone else, they said probably before, as they were preparing for the Packers, anyone else can beat us, not Davante. And that's why he got the Calvin Johnson treatment. And he finished with 6 receptions, 44 yards, and a touchdown. That touchdown making him the sole owner of number 2 in the record books for all-time Packers touchdown receptions, past Jordy Nelson. But despite the double teams, I mean, Davante Adams still had a productive day, scored a touchdown, and he's just unreal. Can we just take a second here to give Davante Adams his due respect?
Yes, Joe, I can back that up with a good stat for you, Joe.
What stat would that be?
Since Week 5 of 2018, Davante has not dropped a pass 20-plus yards down the field. That makes him that puts him at 90 consecutive deep targets without a drop.
That doesn't even seem possible, to be honest. Because you're thinking, even like you're getting targeted 20 yards down the field. Most of the time, you have a guy draped all over you.
Oh, yeah, they're heavily contested most of the time.
If you just think about all the recent deep balls to Davante, I mean, on the sideline, catching ball in traffic, like back shoulder, it's just the guy's unreal. He doesn't drop passes, and even with 2 guys on him, he was able to literally break both of their ankles with an out route in the end zone and just easily score there. I mean, he's unstoppable. And fortunately for the Packers, I mean, they got contributions from the entire receiving corps yesterday. It wasn't just Davante Adams like they've been accused of being over the last couple weeks. I mean, Davante has been just on a straight tear, but it was good to see other guys get involved, and it's important because obviously teams are going to do this and try to stop Davante Adams with every fiber of their being. And when they do that, someone needs to step up, and on Sunday, that man was Marquez Valdez-Scantling. MVS probably had his best game of the season. He's been battling injuries all year long, hamstring, back tightness, what have you, whatever it is. He's been dealing with ailments. But he had a great game. 5 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown. He made a great catch on the underthrown ball to really get the offense going and put them in scoring position on that first touchdown drive, a 31-yarder. Then, obviously, he had that touchdown, a great 11-yard touchdown where he fought for every last inch, made a great hands catch, which is something we've been asking for from MVS, who over the early parts of his career was primarily a body catcher.
Yeah, he was a serial chest catcher.
Yeah, and seeing him just snag that ball with his hands and fight and dive for the end zone,
he was
was
full
awesome.
extension, yeah.
It was awesome, and that's exactly the type of game we needed from him, and hopefully it gets him going with his confidence and just gets him back on track and playing at a high level for this stretch run, because obviously all our receivers are going to need to make a play down the stretch here. But yeah, it wasn't just the MVS and Davante show. Like I said, bunch of guys got involved. Mercedes Lewis, 3 catches, 40 yards.
They need to get this man into the end zone. I feel so bad. He fights and fights and fights and gets dragged out or dragged down at like the 1 or the 2 or the 5, and I'm like, oh, they got to get him in the end zone, bro.
You're totally right, and he's been so close multiple times over the past couple weeks. I mean, but what he's doing is just so impressive because it's not like he's just making the catches. He's wide open on almost every ball he catches, but he's breaking tackles and gaining yak. I mean, 34 of his 40 yards came after first contact, and he was just a beast. And he was rumbling and tumbling down the field every time he had it in his hands. And for a 37-year-old, 17-year veteran tight end. The guy's unreal. And not to mention all the work he does in the blocking game. I mean, he's the best blocking tight end perhaps of all time, Mercedes Lewis. He's phenomenal. I mean, 17 years at that level. What can be said about him? Lazard, 2 for 23. Kind of an odd game for Alan Lazard.
He had that one drop. He
had a drop. He did get the PI, but it was a very suspect pass interference call. He had a nice, tough catch on his first grab of the game to gain a first down. But he also had that miscommunication with Aaron, or maybe Aaron missed him in the back of the end zone. If you ask me, he could have caught that ball. I think Davante would have came down with that one. But Aaron took the blame. He did say that he overthrew him a bit, and I'm sure that's one they'd both like to have back. But coming off of his best game of the season last week, Lazard got involved once again in the pass game, and he finished with an insane run blocking grade on PFF like he does every single week.
Yeah, that's expected at this point.
The guy does so much for the Packers that most people don't even notice.
It makes the drop forgivable, but it was just, if he would have grabbed that.
Yeah, I mean, luckily they got a gimme with the PI on that one, so there was no harm, no foul, but he had a clear drop there.
Yeah.
DeGuara, 3 for 16. A.J. Dillon, 1 for 13. And then Aaron Jones, 2 catches, 12 yards, and a touchdown. It was just a complete game from the Packers' passing attack, even though Aaron did have some missed throws that I'm sure he wants back, most notably that first long ball to Davante on the first drive of the game on third down. Davante was wide open, and he was off to the races if he caught that ball. And then obviously the touchdown ball to Lazard. Aaron overthrew him a little bit on that one, but it was an amazing day from the Packers passing attack, which was to be expected taking on the Ravens and their horrible secondary.
Yeah.
I mean, the most
It's
damaged
withered.
secondary in the league. It got so bad that they had to throw out that number 17 guy out there last night for his first action ever.
Oh, it was
someone else
wasn't
got
that on
hurt.
if I'm not mistaken, I think that was on a touchdown.
Well, it was when Davante shook both
Yeah,
guys. Yeah,
yeah.
he got totally destroyed by Davante Adams, and so did the safety that was
Welcome to
helping
the
over
NFL
top.
guy.
But yeah, so imagine being that guy on your
No.
first ever NFL action. You're man guarding Davante Adams.
Everything he's like he thinks everything
In the
should
red
be
zone.
easier from this point on.
Yeah. He's like, well, I got the hardest part out of the way.
He gets signed for a huge contract because he has tape guarding Davante Adams.
Yeah, face guarding him. Well, that was a pretty tough grab by Davante too. It was kind of a oddly thrown ball.
He made it look easy.
He made it look easy, but it was a tough grab.
Did you see? I forget which drive or play it was, but when Davante jumped off sides, Aaron looked right over. He
Yeah.
snapped his head. He wanted
Yeah.
to yell right at him, but he didn't.
Well, he can't.
Oh,
yeah.
of course
He
not.
didn't
But if it
wanna
was
yell,
anybody
yeah.
else, he was gonna snap because he was already yelling at one of the guys. He was a little bit frustrated. And
Well,
then,
he was angry with Winfrey there.
yeah, exactly.
for-
Winfrey.
He ran the short route. I'm a big Juwan Winfrey fan. I root for that guy to do well. He had a good game a couple weeks ago when he had to play, but this one was a little rough
if that
for
was
him.
Juwan Winfrey,
Oh.
ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, you could tell that once he noticed it was Devontae.
It was funny.
He was like, oh,
It was
damn.
just so funny.
I couldn't believe it was Devontae because they were calling some really lackadaisical false start penalties on both.
Yeah, the
teams.
offensive lineman was just getting set. I
Dennis
didn't think
Kelly I didn't even see him move, and then
Yeah.
they called one on the Ravens as well. And that Cleveland.
that's what I was
guy.
talking about.
Yeah.
I was giving him a little bit of sympathy because he was just honestly he was like pivoting his foot in and then lifted up his hand an inch.
They called that twice. So I thought they got another offensive lineman just swaying in the wind, but no, Devontae gave.
That's
a little
probably his
jolt
first offsides, and
that I could remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember the last time Devontae had a false start, but.
it was just
What
funny to
have
see
you?
Aaron
The
react
op-
like
the,
that.
The pass game was unreal. But in my opinion, what's more impressive about the Packers' offensive attack on Sunday was the fact that they were able to move the ball on the ground against the number one rushing defense in the league. No team has given up less rushing yards than the Baltimore Ravens. That's definitely the strongest aspect of their defense. And the Packers were 4 yards short of a 100-yard day on the ground. I mean, very impressive and something I was thrilled to see. Aaron Jones, 13 rushes, 58 yards, 4.5 yards per rush. And this was really his best game since getting hurt against the Seahawks. He had 2 touchdowns against the Bears last week, but only 8 total touches. So he was still productive but quiet. Whereas here he was rushing at almost 5 yards per clip, and it was just great to see. His touchdown catch, it was the 6th touchdown reception of the year for Aaron Jones, and that is the most by a Packers running back since Johnny Blood McNally back in 1931. That's such a cool stat when I saw that. I love seeing Blood McNally's name get thrown in any stat because that guy's an absolute legend. A couple of years ago, Mike and I were going through our collection of Packer jerseys, and there was a couple that we owned that they didn't age too well. Let's just put it that way. So instead of just not displaying them, we went back and we got them new nameplates. And one of the nameplates we got was Blood McNally. So
wow, I'm surprised you already didn't have a Blood McNally jersey.
It's hard to find a Blood McNally jersey in 2021. I'm pretty sure it's probably hard to find one back in 1931. Blood McNally, I think, wore like 4 or 5 different numbers because back then it was like really not anything like that where they had
yeah,
a
you would
set
show
number.
up and they would just chuck him a jersey.
Yeah, like he probably wore a different number every week.
Yeah. So would that not make it easier to find a Blood McNally jersey?
Well,
you found a Runyon jersey, you could find a Blood McNally jersey.
You probably can, but we made one ourselves. We also made a Levi Dilweg jersey, who's a legend from the 20s. We took the Lacey nameplate off a 27 jersey and put Dilweg on the back. So we just I like seeing Blood McNally's name get thrown in there. Anyone who's been to the Packers Hall of Fame knows that his legendary set of shoulder pads is sitting there in that display case, the Blood McNally shoulder pads. So shout out to Aaron Jones. I mean, such an awesome guy. Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. And just a pleasure to have on the squad. And it's nice to see him starting to amp back up after dealing with that sprained MCL for the past couple weeks. And just the fact that he hasn't missed any time with the MCL injury, bravo to him. Anthony Davis, fellow Cheesehead Anthony Davis, is out 4 weeks right now with an MCL sprain. So the fact that Aaron Jones didn't miss 1 game shows how tough he is. So shout out to Aaron Jones. Great game for him on Sunday. And shout out to A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon really didn't get utilized as much as we're used to seeing him carry the ball over the past several weeks, but he was productive. 7 carries, 22 yards, 1 touchdown. And yeah, the Packers have perhaps the best tandem of running backs in the league. But this season, their rushing numbers really aren't that crazy, due to the fact that the Packers' offensive line has struggled this season when blocking for the run. But on Sunday, the offensive line deserves a lot of credit for helping the running backs gain those 96 yards rushing, because they had a solid game, the offensive line. During the game, Joe Buck referred to the Packers' offensive line as a makeshift offensive line.
That guy's hairline is
me.
makeshift.
That really bothered
guy.
me. There's no secret here that Joe Buck says things that bother me basically on a weekly basis. But to hear him say they're makeshift, it's a little disrespectful, especially because they've been playing so hard this season. And yeah, they're makeshift in the sense of that they're a bunch of backups, but they're playing like a starting offensive line. They're playing good football. And last night and during the game yesterday, there were mistakes made. Dennis Kelly got beat, and he gave up a sack at the end of the first half, stifled that drive. The Packers had the ball back, 2 timeouts, 45 seconds left. It felt like they were about to go get some points until that sack happened. So, yeah, that was tough. And then Royce Newman also gave up a costly sack on 3rd and 5 on the final Packers drive of the game, which got the ball back to the Ravens with a lot of time left, and we know what happened once that occurred. But the line of Yosh Nijman, John Runyon, Lucas Patrick, Royce Newman, and Dennis Kelly, they did their job. And simple as that. They did their job, and they should feel proud of themselves on how they blocked in both the pass and the run game. I mean, Aaron was sacked 3 times, but overall he had enough time in the pocket to pick apart Baltimore's secondary. And the running backs were given nice holes to run through. I mean, the play that stands out in my mind the most was A.J. Dillon's rushing touchdown. They showed it in slow motion a couple times. And on that play, John Runyon Jr. totally just moves the pile to the right.
He got shouted out for that.
And then Josh Nyman, who didn't get shouted out for it, did an amazing job at helping Runyon, stunting right, and then just barreling left and taking out two guys. And A.J. Dillon had a wide open lane to the end zone. It was great to see, and they deserve credit for all 96 rushing yards.
Definitely.
Maybe with the exception of Aaron's, he have 11 on his 5 scrambles. But
yeah,
for the most part, all the yards that were gained by the running backs, the offensive line did their job and opened up holes to the best of their ability.
And I would say great game for Yash. Aaron was celebrating with him at the end of the game. Like, they were pumped. I think he thought Yash played his best game of the year as well. He I don't know, he was my star of the week for the offensive line.
Yash has been playing good football. I mean, he's done everything that he's needed to as a third-string left tackle. And, I mean, usually when a team has a third-string left tackle out there, their quarterback's getting sacked 5, 6, 7, 8 times.
And
but
instead he's getting
Yash,
lifted up by Josh Neiman.
Yeah, Yash
celebrating
is holding
TDs.
Things down. So, yeah, shout out to Yash. And shout out to John Runyon Jr. I mean, shout out to John Runyon Jr. He had a little bit of a rough start to the season, but he started every single game at left guard for the Packers this year. In his second year, last year he was a rookie, and it was the COVID year, so all the rookies from last year had a altered preseason and introduction. So really, this is his first go-around in my eyes, and he's playing great. John Runyon Jr. is playing absolutely phenomenal. He's only given up 2 sacks on the season, and he's a competent run blocker if you look at the Pro Football Focus. I mean, the entire Packers offensive line doesn't have the best grades for run blocking on that website, but John Runyon is competent, and he showed last night that he opens up holes. That's what the man does. And it's no secret that the Weekly Cheese, we are John Runyon Jr. podcast. So shout out to John Runyon for getting his name called out a couple times by the Fox production crew. And perhaps the biggest and most positive takeaway from the Packers' offensive performance on Sunday, as we wrap up the offensive segment here, was they were much improved situationally. They've converted 5 of 9 opportunities on third down, and they scored on 4 of 5 trips to the red zone. Not to mention that, I mean, they were dominant on first down, and they just were converting when they needed to convert. And seeing those numbers improve right now towards the end of the season is very encouraging. The Packers this year, they've seen a big dip in their numbers in red zone and third down conversion.
That used to be their bread and butter.
Last year, they had the most efficient red zone offense in league history. So to see the numbers go down this year was a little concerning, but they've spiked as of late, and I don't see them going down anymore. The Packers offense seems to be getting in a nice rhythm over the last 4 games, and it's only the beginning. There's a lot more ahead of them, and once Bach gets back in there, things should get even better. So things are looking up for this Packers offense. Now the defense, unfortunately, is a little bit of a different story. They did not have the best day on Sunday. And, I mean, for the most part, they really just allowed Tyler Huntley and the Ravens offense to move up and down the field with ease whenever they wanted. They did not seem to have an answer for Mark Andrews, who ended the game with 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they struggled to contain Huntley in the pocket and stop the run throughout the entire second half. I mean, it was tough to watch. Fortunately, they came up with big stops when they needed to. That includes the 2 fourth-down stops, one coming on the goal line on the Ravens' first drive of the game, the other 4th and 5 late in the game, and a big-time pass breakup on the potential game-winning 2-point conversion at the end of the game. But outside of that, there was not many positives from the Packers' defensive unit. They were without Kenny Clark, obviously, which is a huge loss. His presence on the field was missed direly. And with Kenny being out, the Packers, they had to rely on an even dose of Tyler Lancaster and TJ Slayton to try and fill that void. They played 25 snaps each, but unfortunately, they didn't really fill the void that is Kenny Clark. It ended up hurting the defensive performance on both the run stopping and in terms of the pass rush. Really, in general, the Packers' pass rush struggled all game long. They finished with 1 sack on the day, and outside of Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith, who had 5 pressures each from the edge, there was really no pass rush whatsoever. Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith did their best. They were getting to the quarterback, but unfortunately when they got there, they were unable to get their hands on him, and Huntley was able to escape the pocket and just gash right up the middle of the defense. And due to the lack of pressure, Huntley also had a very comfortable pocket to work with and was able to get the ball out and on target, specifically when Tipa and John Garvin are in the game. When Preston and Rashawn are on the sideline,
Catching a breather.
and Kenny's not in the game, there was absolutely no pass rush.
They effectively
whatsoever.
secured Tyler Huntley his next contract.
Yeah, Tyler Huntley finished with a great game because of it. I
They
mean,
the defense has Ravens fans saying that Mark Andrews is the best tight end in the league now. I'm like, come on.
Mark Andrews is
He's
up
good.
there.
He's up there.
He's up
for
there,
sure. But
and his game yesterday was impressive. But it was a lot to do with the lack of pass
That's
rush.
what I'm
I mean,
saying.
Huntley finished the day 28 for 40, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he was able to find Mark Andrews literally whenever he wanted. Particularly in the first half. It was kind of a tale of two halves with how the Packers were getting beat. In the first half, Huntley was playing from a clean pocket and getting the ball to Andrews at will. I mean, in the first half alone, Mark Andrews had 6 catches, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Darnell Savage was just getting beat the entire time by Mark Andrews. It was very hard to watch. He gave up 5 catches, 94 yards, and both touchdowns when guarding Mark Andrews. And it was just hard to watch. The Packers seemed to have no answer. They couldn't get after Huntley, and he was just throwing the ball to Andrews whenever he wanted. It was demoralizing, really. It was tough to watch. Fortunately for the Packers, during that time, the offense was answering, and they were keeping them in the game. And then to start the second half, it was 14-14. The Packers were able to go on that long drive, score a touchdown right out of halftime. The defense held the Ravens to a field goal. And then the Packers scored again. They were able to then get off the field on 4th and 5 in Ravens territory. And the Packers were able to kick a field goal, and they went up by 14 with just 9 minutes remaining in the game. And unfortunately, that's when all the containment issues started happening for the Packers defense. Down 14 with 9 minutes left, Huntley led Baltimore down the field and scored 2 touchdowns. A 75-yard drive and then like a 45-yard drive after a horrible
terrible
punt. By Bojorquez.
the first one wasn't much better either. It bounced out like the 45, and the first one landed at the 50. But those drives were agonizing to watch. They just chunked them to death. They took time off the clock. Oh, my God.
Yeah, during those 2 drives, Huntley converted 2 third downs and a 4th down. And really, due to the lack of interior pressure that was being applied by Lancaster and Slayton, I mean, they only had 2 combined pressures, those 2 guys. Huntley had just the biggest escape lanes right up the middle and just killed the Packers with his feet. I mean, he finished 13 carries, 76 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And really, it was devastating. I mean, finally, the pass rush was starting to get there. Rashawn and Preston were beating their guys and wreaking havoc in the backfield. But Huntley, since there was no interior pressure, was just able to sneak right out the middle and pick up first downs with his legs every single time. Very reminiscent of the 2013 playoff game against Colin Kaepernick. It was hard to watch. It went from hard to watch because they couldn't stop Andrews to hard to watch because Huntley was just running up the middle every single play. It was terrible. And although most of the damage on the ground did come from Huntley running the ball, Latavius Murray during those final 2 drives got going, and he was the beneficiary of Kenny Clark being out as well. 7 rushes, 48 yards. I mean, Jesus, nearly, 7 yards per carry? Just ridiculous holes on the inside of the defensive line. And the Ravens were able to capitalize on it and really make it a game. The Packers eventually did get the stop on the 2-point conversion at the end of the game. And they were able to sneak away with the victory. But not a good day from the defense
No.
whatsoever.
Darnell needed to make that play. He had such a bad day.
Yeah, luckily Darnell made that play, and Eric Stokes was in there on that
Right
play.
there.
Stokes played phenomenal.
You didn't hear anything from Stokes.
No, and he let up a couple catches here and there, but nothing damaging. And, I mean, he let up 7 catches, 35 yards. That's it. He was targeted 9 times. He received an 89.6 coverage rating. So he had a great game.
He just continues to progress.
And once Jair gets back in there, everything's just going to be so much easier. I mean, even at the end of the game there, Kevin King was in there more than he was throughout the entire game when they started going to that dime package in hopes to stop Andrews on those final couple drives. And Kevin King was getting targeted every single time.
Over Chandon Sullivan? Are they displeased with his performance, or was he injured?
Instead of Henry Black, Chandon Sullivan was out there too. They brought Kevin King in there to play kind of like that dime linebacker.
What?
Yeah. The role Henry Black would play in the dime package, they brought Kevin King in, kind of just throw a bigger body at Andrews. But Kevin King played horrible.
No.
It's really, really just – it sucks to see Kevin King out there, especially when he's getting beat. But I don't know if you noticed this or not, but Kevin King was extremely late running onto the field there at the end of the game.
I saw that. That was him. I didn't know who that was.
And then even on Huntley's first rushing touchdown, on the first touchdown drive, the 75-yard drive, on that play the Packers only had 10 guys on the field. There was only 10 defenders on the field on that play.
They highlighted that's why Huntley was able to escape to the left there.
I mean, part of me thinks it could have been Kevin King not on the field.
It could have been.
Part of me thinks that. I don't know for a fact, obviously, but
when Kevin King came on late for that play, I believe he was guarding Mark Andrews. I could be wrong, but whoever he was guarding had the potential to burn him because he was running on the field, and then whoever he was covering was running a crossing route, basically going with Kevin King. If he would have just stopped and went the other way, Kevin King was so committed to going that direction that he could have just burnt him. But
yeah, it was hard to
I was
see.
like, what are you doing?
How can you be so late to get on the field? I don't know. It happened again. Obviously, only 10 guys are on the field, so inexcusable mistakes by the Packers defense and not many shining spots. I mean, Rashawn Gary had a good game. Eric Stokes had a good game. Devondre played all right, but outside of those 3 guys, it was really a poor defensive performance. And, I mean, the Packers are lucky they left there with a victory. The Ravens created 24 first downs on the day. They converted 9 third downs. And they outgained the Packers 354 to 343. So, ultimately, the Ravens offense had a better day than the Packers offense simply because the defense could not stop them.
Yeah, if the Packers defense didn't step up on that last play, they could have lost that game from just defensive errors.
And it's really we're lucky that 2-point conversion didn't get converted. I mean, very lucky. And unfortunately, this does seem kind of like a downward trend for the Packers defense. I mean, they've allowed 28 or more points in the last 4 games, which is concerning considering they only allowed 28 points one time throughout the first 10 games of the season. So over the last 4 games, I mean, the Packers defense has been getting scored on a lot more. And hopefully moving forward, as Jair Alexander gets back in there, obviously there's hopes that Darius Smith comes back, and Kenny Clark should be back next week, thank goodness. They'll be able to get back on track and stop teams from putting up these big numbers on them. Because it's never good when you're giving up over 28 points. So.
No, and I think at this point the defense needs the injection because a lot of guys are playing, above their expectation, I guess you could say, so they're probably gassed, and you can't expect them to do that every single week. So now you're about to get your Pro Bowlers back with these guys that are already going to be motivated from getting your Pro Bowlers back. So hopefully this is a bottoming out period for the defense.
Yeah, and hopefully nothing but good things from here on out because a game like that on the defense side of the ball come playoff time, it's a recipe for disaster. Recipe for disaster. And speaking of a recipe for disaster, come playoff time.
Nothing new on this front, Joe.
Nothing new at all, but the special teams. The special teams needs to clean it up. And I know we've been saying that for nearly the entire season now, but when is it going to click?
It's almost getting worse.
It's hard to say anything will be worse than last week's game against the Bears on the special teams, but Sunday was minimally better just by a fraction. I mean, the only thing that saved the day for the special teams on Sunday was the fact that A.J. Dillon fell on that onside kick. But up until that point, I had no confidence in the special teams whatsoever. It seemed like every single time they were on the field, a negative play occurred.
Yes, and I don't know if A.J. and Devontae are regulars on the hands team, but that's the only reason. It was just I was going to get excited and say, wow, they recovered that cleanly, but then I saw Devontae, A.J., I think MVS was out there. It was like the whole offensive core
They need to be
basically
out
just on the
there
hands
because-
team. So that doesn't solve anything, though, because you can't play them there every time unless you do. Then you just have no defensive special teams, basically.
Well, on onside kicks, I think Devontae needs to be out there.
He might be. I just don't know.
I mean, it just needs to clean up because it's getting very concerning. On special teams, there was plethora of errors on Sunday. There was the fair catch interference penalty by Yayadam to start it off. And right when that happened, we was like, oh, here we go again with the special teams conundrums. Then they had a holding penalty, which negated the longest kickoff return of the year. Amari Rodgers brought it back to the 45, only to have it brought back due to a hold. Not long after that, there was the botched kickoff return. I mean, it was basically, you could tell Harbaugh was getting ready to do it all game long. He kicked it super short right at John Garvin.
Yeah, and I don't know if he meant to do it, but he had it rolling. It was
They
like
meant to
rolling
do
like
it.
a knuckler. Oh, my
They
God.
meant to do it. That was they were going for it there. That was their turnover opportunity. They were trying to force one there, and they almost got it.
Almost.
If Garvin didn't fall on that, it would have been devastating.
And I think Harbaugh had some injuries on the special teams, too. So if he had his full special teams unit, they probably would have done something crazy.
Well, you know that Harbaugh, I mean, with his special teams background, he was going to look to try to make a play like that, and he almost got away with it. Oh, thank goodness he didn't. And then, obviously, they had the 40-yard punt following the delay of game penalty right there at the end, setting up the Ravens with a very short field just to simply walk down the field and score that second touchdown. But really, things need to get better. Mo Drayton must be on the hot seat after this season. The special teams is abysmal, and they need to get better in that phase of the team, or else a loss to a good team is right around the corner. It's only a matter of time. You could only play that bad on special teams and have that many mistakes before it really bites you in the butt. And hopefully this will be the last week we complain about the Packers' horrible special teams. Hopefully it is. Hopefully. And the fact that there are so many things to clean up after Sunday's victory should be looked at as a positive. Right now, the Green Bay Packers have the best record in the NFL. They're the number one seed in the NFC. They're eyeing home field advantage in the first round bye. Their destiny is in their hands right now, and there are things to clean up, obvious things to clean up. So that means this team's not even playing at the level that they know they can play at. Once things get cleaned up, and the Packers can put together a complete game on both sides of the ball, I truly believe that they are the best team in the National Football League and clear Super Bowl favorites when all things are clicking. And they're going to need to carry this momentum into next week. There's a big-time Christmas Day game coming up at Lambeau Field against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns, just like the Ravens this week, are fighting in that extremely close AFC North, but
Against the
AFC in
Ravens.
general. The Ravens and Browns and Cincinnati Bengals are all one game apart from one another. It's anyone's division as of right now.
And the Browns already wanted to win that game, but with the Ravens loss, they want to win it even more.
Yeah, and the Browns, they'll be at a little bit of a disadvantage. They play Tuesday this week, and then they got to turn right back around and play Saturday. So
And do they get the COVID players back, or are they still COVID-stricken on Saturday as well?
I'm not entirely sure. We'll see, but I mean, a Tuesday game, then a Saturday game is
That's tough.
tough. So the Packers should be major favorites going into that one, and I believe they'll take care of business. This offense is just starting to click. The defense knows it can play better than it did on Sunday against the Ravens. I mean, Kenny Clark being out for that game was a huge deal, and luckily he'll be back next week. But there's a lot to look forward to. the fun is just getting started for this Packers team, and they hold their destiny in their hands. The Packers run the North. Can't wait to get that T-shirt. I'm sure all of you out there are already ordering yours. And before we get out of here, I do just want to talk about a new relic here on the Weekly Cheese. Mike from the Weekly Cheese, you all know him. He got me a present for Christmas. Since he's going to the Christmas game, I won't be seeing him for the holidays, so we exchanged gifts yesterday. And what I have here is a jar of Packers pay dirt. It is soil from Lambeau Field that was jarred up back in '98 when they were redoing the field. Todd Edelbeck, the field supervisor there at Lambeau Field, wrote this nice thing on the package, and he scooped the soil into these jars. And I have Lambeau Field soil here now on my desk, and that is this week's Relic of the Week, a very cool item.
Give it a shake. Let the people hear the shake. Yeah, there it is.
That's the soil you hear. So very cool item. Thank you to Mike for that. And hey, it is the holiday time, so hopefully you all listening will be getting a restock of Packer gear and memorabilia for the holidays. I know that's what I'm looking forward to. And yeah, we'll talk to you all a little bit later on in the week when we preview the Packers and Browns. Chris and I also do have cheese on everything. It's in the works. Don't you worry. Just keep an eye out for the cheese on everything as well. Chris, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Hopefully we get a snowy Packers game on Saturday for Christmas. And
Fortunately, I believe it's going to be 36 degrees right now. That's what it's
just
saying.
Cold, no snow.
No snow, unfortunately.
That
As of right
stinks.
now, things could change in a matter of seconds in terms of weather.
Hopefully. I don't think it was even supposed to snow, really, when we woke up to go to the game, but then it did.
Yeah, we did see a nice little coating of snow
A
there,
dusting.
so hopefully the same goes for them on Christmas Day, but either way, it's going to be a dominant performance over the Browns on Saturday. I'm pumped for it. But yeah, until next time, as always, remember, the cheese stands alone. And go Pack Go, everyone. 11-3, NFC North champs.
Come on, Pack, green and gold, time